How do you put so damn much sugar in such little coffee?
This is water.
Just saying. All right, everybody got name tags? We good to go? Great. All right. So, any questions before we start? Questions? Louis? It's like, let me go through my list.
Congratulations.
Wow. Oh, you gotta sign, yeah. He told me. So no questions? We're good? Yes, this chapter was good?
I have a few, but I'm not gonna bring them up.
Do it. Your questions on everybody's mind.
Do it.
Lauren, whatever you drink, you gotta bring for everybody. I'm just saying. Alcohol right in the morning, every day. Oh wait, for life. That's not alcohol, it's just soda. Just wanna make sure. Go ahead, Louis. This is the only chapter we're gonna do today. It's a long chapter, but let's address,
So that one, the key term review number 2, question number 4. It's, no, question number 5. Parole evidence rule.
wait. You said it? Okay, here you go. This one?
Number 5, parole evidence.
Parole evidence rule. So, parole evidence rule, hold on, because I'm not reading this. I don't do these, that's fine. That's from chapter 11. Just go back, it's the key terms right there, number 2.
Oh.
Yeah. It's L. Convention that written contract overrides spoken promises. So I told you that a contract could be oral or written. So the answer to parole evidence rule is this one. Great. So parole evidence rule shows that I can promise something, like I said, I was going to give Claudia $1 million to sell Coke, right? But when we put it in writing, she's smiling, Coke. But when we put it in writing, I forgot a 0. Remember I said that? Mm-hmm. So what's in writing supersedes what was spoken. That's what parole evidence rule says. But also, then the statute of frauds that we spoke about right after, so this is right here. Let me give you the actual page. So right after we spoke about it, that there's a statute of frauds and the exemptions. As long as you got clear and convincing evidence, you should be able to enforce the contract. So right here, it's on page 136. The answer to that one is right there, page 136. The valid contract may be oral or written. Parole evidence rule, however, states that a written contract takes precedence over oral agreements or promises. So 5 matches with L. Next question.
Okay, for now.
Huh?
It's okay for now.
Okay, I'm trying to get the coffee delivered. So, go ahead, just give me the other questions. Hit me with.
Unilateral contracts?
Yes, it's one-sided agreement. You still on the key terms? Is it on the key terms?
Yes,
Okay.
number 12.
Okay, so unilateral means one-sided agreement, only one party must do something before the other one does anything.
Is that the same thing like leasing a car? That type of arrangement?
Because leasing a car is an option, so yes. Every time there's an option, only one party must comply, not the other one. So the seller must sell, but the buyer doesn't have to buy. So if the buyer decides to buy, then the seller must sell.
Is that a unilateral contract? It is.
Yep, a bilateral is a regular, I'm really gonna put a magnet on that highlighter.
Not a Sharpie, it's a running.
Huh?
It's not a Sharpie, it's a running.
Listen, whatever works,
It's running.
keeps running. Why these chapters have to be long? Okay, here we go. So the answer would have been, it's a contract binding on one party, the other party is free to act or not, so option. So unilateral agreement is A. What was that? That was, so 12. 12 is A. What else? Are you afraid of speaking now? Come on.
No, I want to give somebody a chance.
They're all waiting on you. Right before you get here, they're like, is Lou's gonna ask questions today? I'm like, yes, don't worry. They wanna know. Go ahead. While he's searching, does anybody else have questions from your studying at home? Besides cooking? Margarita?
Question number 8, the consideration gift exchange for said contract may take the form of, I think, is the letter number A, because it's down payment and not. Because I'm very confused, cash.
So here's my question.
Hmm.
What is consideration?
Consideration exchange.
Exchange of value. Right.
Exactly.
A down payment and a promise to pay is the value, right? Exchange of value. A purchase money mortgage is exchange of value, and cash is value, exchange of value. So the answer is D. Any of these is considered an exchange of value or consideration. So it's all of them, all of the above. If there's a monetary value to it, then there's an exchange. So all of them account for them.
I think my question is, the another question is that, pero I need to ask. When I buy a house, can I give you cash for the listing?
When you buy a house, can you give me cash? Sure.
No, for the listing, for the seller, can I give you cash immediately like that, face to face?
So,
It's a dumb question, pero
there's no dumb question.
believe me. Yes.
My answer might be dumb, but the question is not. So here's the thing. Can you bring cash to a transaction?
Yes,
Where's the cash coming from? Is it under the mattress? Was it reported? Did you cash out of the bank? Do you have any proof of where it came from? If you have proof where it came from, then it's not a problem, but the transaction is now between the two of you. It brings a lot of other problems. We're going to talk about this in chapter 21. It brings a lot of other problems, which is recording the deeds, protection, so the title insurance, all that stuff. Once you bring a title company into play, then they don't want to see a bag full of money. They want a check. Okay? So can you bring cash? Do a private transaction? You can. You're just opening yourself to a lot of liabilities. Having to explain to the IRS what happened, having to prove where the money came from, and potential liabilities because you were not insured.
because it's not legal.
I didn't say it was illegal. I just said that transactions of $10,000 or more must be reported to the IRS.
Okay, thank you.
It's not illegal, but if there's a cash transaction, check, or money orders, wires, anything of $10,000 more, you have to prove to the IRS where the money came from.
And the seller might not agree to that because cash could be fake.
It could be a lot of
They
things.
have to go verify.
So it's not illegal, it's just a lot of liability comes with it.
I just think how much time is gonna take that person to sit there and try to count $200,000.
Listen, a $2 million lawsuit won by Apple was paid by Samsung in pennies. So, yeah,
Just because.
just because. Like, you want it, you got it. Let's make you count. Each penny. You can, this is just for the heck of it. There's a lot of videos out there of people paying their tickets, their parking tickets or whatever it is. They're like, you want me to pay for it, huh? Sure, here's pennies. Make you count. You make me work, come down here, I'll make you work. All right? But yes, it's the trouble of having to count and, again, making sure that it's real money. Because it could be fake. I actually got money from the bank the other day. One of the bills, the other day? A few months ago. One of the bills that came from the bank was a fake one. So not even the money they have is 100%. So a money order or a check or certified checks are way better than cash. Because those you cannot, well, you can forge them, but once they hit the account, it's no longer your problem. Got it? But if you have the cash, I'll take it.
Me too.
No, I claim it first. Just saying.
Well, yeah, I can help.
Listen. I claim it first. It is live. Yes.
If it's a certified check, they still can't report you or the IRS?
They have to. $10,000 or more must be reported to the IRS.
But it's a check from the bank, they still have.
No,
to.
it's your check. It's written by the bank, but it's your check. It's your money. It's not the bank's money. It's yours.
Okay.
So regardless, the only thing about the certified check is the bank is certifying that there's funds in your account. So they take it and give it that way.
It's still considered cash.
Yeah. Okay. So you're going to see later on, you're going to see a lot of times the term cash. But when they say cash, they're talking about checks. Nowadays, that's what it is. We don't walk around with bags full of cash. Unless you're in that lifestyle. But Louis, I'll give you enough time to get the next one.
Difference between unenforceable contract and voidable contract.
Unenforceable and voidable. Okay. You're still in the key terms?
Page 157, key terms. Review number
Okay.
2.
So you have 11 and 14, right?
11 and 15.
Oh, voidable 15. All right, so let's see what we have here. So I give you exactly. Okay. A contract that is binding, but one party may disaffirm. It's voidable. So, and where was the unenforceable? Let's see what options we have here. Okay. So, B is a seemingly valid contract, but neither party can sue to force performance that's unenforceable. So just like when Jason and Robert were drunk, in the example in the book, while they're drunk and they sign or under the influence and they sign the contract is valid, right? So, but once they sober up, they can choose to either move forward or not. So it's seemingly valid because it's two adults, right? But then they can choose to whether or not sue for performance. So if I sober up the next day, I'm like, what happened here? We signed a contract, I'm not moving forward. And you want to sue me, you can't. So neither party can sue for performance. It's unenforceable. It appears to be valid, but it's valid as between the parties. If both choose to move forward, great. If one says no, the other one cannot sue. So that's unenforceable. Where a voidable contract, where I told you that I had, my son and I have a property together, he's 13 years old, right? Once you reach the age of 18, what can you do?
Get out.
Get out. Somebody that's under distress, somebody that's a senior, they get into a binding contract, but then because of their being forced or taken advantage of, they can void or ask the courts to void the contract. So the difference between voidable and unenforceable is both of them are valid, but in one neither party can sue, where in the other one of the parties can disaffirm. Okay? Good? Agreed?
No.
Good? All right. Next questions? questions? All right, cool. So here's what we're gonna do. During the break, if you guys have questions, just bring it up. So today, it's only one chapter, but it's a long chapter. So just like chapter 3, I'll break this into 2 parts. So I'll give you a break. Just make sure whatever questions you have, you line them up for that time, okay? Or right after class. You guys ready? Leases. Does everybody know what a lease is? What is it?
Something that you pay for to use.
Something you pay for to use. Isn't that a purchase as well?
No, because you don't own it. For a period of, so
Okay.
you're using it.
For a
Period of time.
period of time.
Yes.
Okay. Because when you purchase something, you have 5 rights. The right of possession, the right to use in any legal manner, the right of enjoyment, the right of exclusion, and the right of disposition or alienation. You guys remember this? Chapter 5? 5 rights. When you lease, you have the same rights except for one. You have the right of possession, which is to be here. We're leasing this space, so we're here. We have the right to use it in any legal manner, so it has to be for a legal purpose. We have the right of enjoyment and the right of exclusion. If I say you cannot come in, you cannot come in, period. But I don't have the right of disposition or alienation. I cannot sell this because it's not mine to sell. So that's the biggest difference between a lease and ownership. All the same rights, but not the right to sell or gift the property. So, let's go right here to leasing real estate. And I believe that this chapter, I've mentioned this to you guys, I believe this chapter should be a course for every potential landlords, not homeowner, but a landlord should know these rules and regulations. In fact, some of you are landlords or have been landlords in the past or will be landlords. And there's a few stuff here that I can guarantee, probably even the majority of the stuff here, I can guarantee that you guys do not know. Ready? Lease. A lease from an owner of real estate, known as the lessor, to a tenant, the lessee, transfers the right to possession and use of the owner's property to the tenant for a specified period of time. So it's yours for this period of time, period. Simple, right? This agreement sets forth the length of time the contract is to run, the amount to be paid by the lessee for the right to use the property, and other rights and obligations of the parties. A transfer property by lease is known as a demise. All right, so we talked about this in chapter 5, and we mentioned later in a different chapter, demise and devise. What is a devise? Transfer property by will. So every time you see demise is rental. Transfer property by lease. So I transfer to you to rent the unit from me, it's a demise. Every time you see devise, that means I put the property in the will, and when I die, the devisor, which was me, I die, right? That property that was devised to the devisee, my heir, is now transferred. Okay, we're going to repeat all this in chapter 20. So, demise. Now, the landlord grants the tenant the right to occupy the premises and use them for the purposes stated in the lease. We're going to go over all this. In return, the landlord retains the right to receive payment for the use of the premises, as well as the right to retake possession after the lease term has expired. Now, please highlight, underline, put stars. A lease is both a contract. We talked about contracts yesterday, and that it sets forth conditions for both parties to follow, and a conveyance, and that it grants a leasehold estate. Does anybody remember the word conveyance? Transfer. Okay, every time you see conveyance means transfer. Every time you see transfer means conveyance, automatically, right? So, a lease is a contract, got the terms, offer, acceptance, competent parties, all that good stuff. It also says, I now transfer it to you with these limitations. New Jersey statute of frauds, which we went over yesterday, requires that leases for a period of more than 3 years be in writing. So we can have verbal leases. We talked about verbal or oral contracts yesterday, right? Yes?
Yes. Yes.
Great. So we can have these verbal agreements. But if it's for 3 years or more, you're going to rent this for 3 years or more, it has to be in writing. Okay? Now, if you're going to think about common sense, everything should be in writing. But some people just believe in good faith, something that probably existed millions of years ago, where people promise to do certain things and word is bond, right? My word is my bond, and they follow that. But nowadays, put everything in writing. Next, a lease may be recorded if it is for 2 years or more. What does it mean to record? Sorry?
Make a contract, you say?
That's put it in writing. What does it mean to record something? Bring it to the county? Why would I bring it to the county?
But you have to record it into the files, like archive.
Public records.
Yeah.
So you bring it to the county to put it into public land records. So you would record a lease. Now, why would you re-record the lease? Doesn't make any sense, right? It's a lease. Anybody? Why do we record anything?
So that everybody knows that you have rights to this.
To let the world know that we have some rights. To let the world know we have some rights. That's the reason why we put stuff into public records. When somebody records a mortgage, they're saying, hey, I'm here and I'm first. Anybody that records after is secondary, right? A lease is the same thing. I'm recording the lease as a tenant to let the world know, especially 2 years or more, to let the world know, hey, if the landlord is foreclosed upon, we are here. You cannot kick me out because we are here, right? And it doesn't have to be in writing, but a lease doesn't have to be in writing for you to enforce this. We're going to go over that later. But it is recommended if it is 2 years or more, it is recommended that you record your long-term rights. Okay, for a landlord, it's great to have something recorded because they can mortgage it. They can get money against that future income. All right, so there's advantages to recording stuff for both sides. This is common sense. We covered it. In order for a broker to successfully sue for compensation on a lease transaction, the authorization to lease something for somebody else must be in writing. Yep. All right. That was easy. Leasehold estates. Have you heard of this before? Yes?
Yes.
The last class we took. Okay. Like last class? Got it. Great. So for the ones that were here since last week, beginning of last week, have you heard the term leasehold estate? We talked about freehold estates and leasehold estates, chapter 6. Freehold estates and leasehold. Under freehold, I told you was ownership, and we talked about fee simple, fee determinable, and life estates. You all remember this, right? Claudia, say yes. She wasn't here. All right, so you all remember this. And I said leasehold, I had highlighted in the book. The only thing I had highlighted was lease. It was in green. Because every time you hear the word or see the word lease, you think about tenants. So every time it's a leasehold estate or less than freehold estate, it means tenancy. You're a tenant. Okay, so freehold, you're the owner. Leasehold, you are a tenant. Okay, so a tenant's right to occupy land is called leasehold estate. Just as there are several types of freehold or ownership estates, there are also various leasehold estates. All right, what I want you to do is go to this table at the bottom. It's hot. You're running a fever? That's not good. You guys hot or is okay?
Okay.
Good?
She's going through it.
She's going through it. That's what happens when you go to Vegas. Whatever happens in Vegas does not stay in Vegas. Anyway, leasehold estates. Do you guys notice that there's only one thing that's highlighted here?
Yes.
That's for you.
Estate for years. All right, so stick to estate for years. Forget this side. Just estate for years. If you see that sentence right there, estate for years, and estate means ownership or interest in this case. All right, if it's estate for years, what is the first thing that comes to mind about this type of rental or lease? First thing.
It's recorded.
It's recorded? Okay, we'll go with that. What else?
It's
But
laid.
if it says for years, which means it's a period of time,
Okay, how long of that period?
I don't know, most years.
Multiple years, maybe, so long term, right? That's what you think about? Okay, so it could be, but it also could be short term. So the reason why I have this one highlighted is because it's the most confusing one. The thing about estate for years is that it's for a definite period of time. Has anybody been on vacation recently or in a getaway to Vegas maybe? I mean, on a getaway for like a couple days? Okay.
Got your back, honey. I'll get you one too.
In the middle of the class? Anyway, I'm never gonna let that one go. Just giving you a heads up. So if you've been
Order.
somewhere, huh?
Order the McCafe.
Or the McCafe, yeah, you're not getting rid of that one. But anyway, so if you've been somewhere for a short period of time, let's say 3 days, 4 days, a week, 2 weeks, right, on vacation or a getaway, let me ask you something. Did you go to a hotel?
Yeah.
Great. So before you went there, did you register?
Yes,
Okay. When you pre-registered to go to that hotel, did you have a check-in date?
yes,
Okay. Did you have a checkout date?
yes,
Okay. So that means that you have a time to get in and a time to get out. So that means that you were there for a definite period of time. How many days were you there? 4 days? It's an estate for years. That's the tricky part about estate for years, because it doesn't have to be for years. And you don't have to write this because we're going to highlight and put stars, but I want to focus on the table because I'm going to address the whole page, right, just with the table, and then we highlight this. But what I want you to write, what's very important for you to write, next to definite period of time, I want you to write check in, check out. Because I want you to remember the getaway. I want you to remember the vacation. It doesn't have to be for years. The key feature is a check-in and a check-out. Okay? So we're going to stick to that for now. And we're going to skip the state from period to period. We're going to go to at will and sufferance. Celine, let me ask you a question. You said you went 4 days, you had to check in, you had to check out. When did you check out? The last day, I know.
The last
What day was it?
the Sunday.
Sunday, great.
Yeah.
It's always the last day. So Sunday you checked out. That's what you had scheduled.
Yes.
Great. Now, what if, right? Actually, before that, let me ask you, did they call you in the morning and say, hey, checkout is at whatever time? You're out before that?
I went to them first.
You went to them first, so you got to them before they got to you. That's very smart.
Yeah.
But you know that they do call,
Right.
right?
I'll check for the 11.
Do they have to? No, that is called a courtesy call. In the lease, it's the same thing. Because what you did was a short-term lease for 4 days of the space, right? But in the lease, it's the same thing. In the residential lease, it's a 1 year lease, let's say. At the end of that 1 year, does the landlord have to call you and say, hey, are we going to renew? No, there's a checkout date at the end of 1 year. You guys got it? So my next question is, if that courtesy call doesn't come in and you overstay, are you allowed to stay or do you have to go? It depends. But if you have to go, right? If you have to go, then they are at sufferance. The landlord is suffering because you are still there. You guys got it? you had a checkout date and you're still here, Celine, you have to go. This is the courtesy call that by 12 o'clock, you have to be out. Okay? Here comes 12 o'clock and you're still there. I have somebody coming in at 4. As a landlord, I'm suffering. And I need to kick you out. Good so far? So at sufferance means you're there without
Landlord consent.
landlord's consent. Correct. And the tenancy at sufferance can be evicted at any time. We're going to go over this as well. Okay? At sufferance, if you're there without my consent, you can get kicked out at any time. Is this good so far?
Yes.
All right. So, at will. Celine, what if when they called you at 11 o'clock, you said, I really love being here. Is there any way I can stay another day? And they said yes. You're overstaying still, right? Because your original period was 4 days. Now you're staying a 5th day. That is now a tenancy at will because the landlord allowed you to stay another day, or another month, or another year, whatever you guys agree to. Does that make sense? So, the 2 basic estates that exist is estate for years, which is a definite period, and the period to period or periodic estate, which we commonly know as month to month. Okay, I did not address it because it's common. Everybody knows it's month to month. That means you're there for 30 days, and if I want to kick you out, I got to give you a notice to get out, right? But it automatically renews. You guys got it? These are the 2 basics. The thing is, with a definite estate, the estate for years, I gave you a 1-year notice that at the end of it, you got to leave. A period to period, I got to give you a notice when I want you to leave. So let's go a whole year, month to month. At the end of that 1 year, I got to give you a 30-day notice or 1 month's notice, right, for you to leave. Does that make sense? Then you either stay with my permission at will, or you have to leave. You're at sufferance. You guys got it?
Yeah.
Yes.
So if the lease is up, let's say, the 25th to the 30th of January, and the tenant still stays, so the other estate suffer.
If the tenant stays
Yeah, they're not.
without my consent,
Without my consent.
it's at sufferance. I'm suffering. And every time I'm suffering, I can just kick you out through court. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. In a hotel, they'll call the cops.
Yeah.
But in a regular residential lease, you have certain rights. So I have to go through court. I'm going to go over all this in this chapter. But I want you to understand the basic lease structures. Any questions here? I need to get some water since I did not get coffee.
So estate at will and estate for years. It's
Uh-huh.
just about the same.
Nope.
No?
Nope. Because the period to period is also at will. Until I give you notice or you give me notice.
Oh, right, definitely.
That's why I separated them. Estate for years and estate from period to period. These are the 2 basic estates. I either have a set period of time or I have an automatically renewable period of time. These are the 2 basic estates. And then after that, you will become at will or sufferance. So at will or sufferance is a consequence of our original agreement. You either stay because I allow you, or you have to leave because you're there without my consent. It's one or the other. Questions? No? All right, great. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to highlight. Everything we went over is right here. Again, the reason why I wanted to focus on the table is it's a lot easier to understand. Okay? So it says leasehold estate that continues for a definite period of time with a specific termination date is an estate for years. Specific termination date. If you guys want to write, check in, check out again, you can. When a definite term is specified in a written or oral lease, and that period of time has expired, the tenant is required to vacate the premises. Look what's in green. Please highlight, underline, put stars. No notice is required to terminate such a lease at the end of the term. Because I gave you the notice the day we sign. That's the courtesy call. It doesn't have to happen. Right? Celine knew up front that she checks in on a Thursday and checks out on a Sunday. Simple as that. Okay? Estate for years. At the bottom it says, an estate for year may not necessarily last for years or even for 1 year. We already got this covered. Just make sure you highlight the line for stars. We got it covered. For example, it could be for, right on top, for 6 weeks or 10 months. Its distinguishing characteristic is that it begins and ends at a specific time. Again, if you want to repeat 1/3 time, check in, check out. Every time you see estate for years or definite estate or period or definite period, that's what it is. Check in, check out. So if I tell you that you have a 6-month lease, what type of leasehold estate is this? Estate for years. Because 6 months, I'm telling you, at the end of 6 months, you're done. Okay? If I tell you you have a 6-month to 6-month lease, let's say it renews every 6 months, then it's a periodic estate. If I have a year-to-year periodic estate, a month-to-month, a week-to-week, a day-to-day, periodic. You got it? Cool. So that's the next one, periodic estate.
The question is, if we have a year lease and both tenant and landlord, they just allowed to renew by itself, and not renew the tenant stay, overstay. The landlord didn't say anything.
Okay, so we're going to go over that right now, actually. Hold on to that thought, because I'm addressing it right after this. But hold on to that thought. So, periodic estates, sometimes called estates from period to period, are created when the landlord and tenant enter into an agreement that continues for indefinite length of time without a specific expiration date. Rent, however, is payable in definite intervals. So a month to month has no end date. You are month to month until I tell you you got to leave or you tell me you're leaving. But the rent is payable in that interval that we determined. So month to month means payable month to month, every month. Okay. Now these tenancies generally run for a certain amount of time, for instance, month to month or year to year. And the agreement is automatically renewed for similar succeeding periods until one of the parties gives notice. I just explained this, right? A month-to-month tenancy is created when a tenant takes possession with no definite termination date and pays the rent on a monthly basis. We covered this. All right. Tenancy from year to year is created when a tenant for a term of years remains in possession or holds over after the expiration of the lease term. Okay? So you had a 1-year lease, expired, and we both agreed for you to stay. Well, now it renews. Look what it says. To address your question, when no new lease agreement has been made, the landlord, as I was explaining before on the table, right, the landlord may either evict the tenant or accept the holdover tenancy. So the year expired. It was a 1-year lease. Good so far?
Yeah.
You should have left on Sunday. You're still here. As a landlord, as long as you pay me, I'm good. Don't worry about it. Good so far? That means I'm allowing it. It's at will. I'm allowing the holdover tenancy. If I want you to leave, because you're supposed to leave on Sunday, now I'm suffering. So I have to evict you. Okay? And it could be converted. If I allow you to stay, it's converted to an at will, and you're paying on a monthly basis, but without an actual lease. So it becomes a month to month. You guys got it? So the question is, when you see this term holdover, you have to remember, as a tenant, you're holding possession of the property for a certain period of time. If you go over that period of time, it's called a hold over the period of time. I can either allow it or reject it. Good?
That question was not that, but close.
Close to it, okay, can go with it.
So now they're both looking at the date, and went by, and landlord or all of a sudden it says, you know, wait a minute, this guy's supposed to be leaving in February, we are now in April, 2 months later.
Okay.
Should the landlord, get another lease?
You became a month-to-month.
It's still a
It became a month-to-month, still a holdover, right? Should he enforce the new lease?
What
He
lease?
signed? Whole new lease.
Well, you say now.
Can I bring one? That's what you're asking? Yeah.
What, the tenant says no.
Then here's a 30-day notice.
There you go.
But that's what I was saying. I can either allow it or not. You can either renew or not. The ball's in your court now. You can choose whatever you want. It's on the landlords to allow or reject. If it's after a month, after 2 months, after 3 months, it's your property.
As long as
The
the
fact
landlord is
that
still accepting the rent.
As long as they accept the rent, is at will. But it comes to a point 3 months later that you're like, maybe we should put another year lease. Hey, if the tenant does not accept, it's my property, you're on the month-to-month, here's a 30-day notice. That's it. You got it? Now, in certain locations, municipalities, you have to act in good faith. Even though the law allows you to give a 1 month's notice, we're gonna go over that in a second. Even though I only have to give you 1 month's notice, a good faith action would have been to give you at least 45 days. And most judges, that's what they'll look at you like. They're like, okay, really, Mr. Landlord, your tenant's been here and now you're just kicking him out in 30-day notice, that's it? Order, give him another 15 days. All right, so that happens a lot of times. So I was just talking about that with one of our agents regarding a property that his client's trying to buy. There's 3 tenants there. They're paying $900. The one I was telling you yesterday, paying $900,
I have a
$950.
similar situation.
Yeah, $900s, $950s, and the buyer wants to buy, but without the tenants, because the rent is
Low.
very low. So he wants to bring everybody up to date, and he cannot bring up to date with the current tenants. 'Cause we're going to go over this. You cannot just raise rents just because you're the new owner. So the only way to do it is to kick them out. How can you kick them out? If they're on the month-to-month, it's a 30-day notice. You got it?
Yeah.
But I told him, you should definitely have the buyer's attorney consult with their attorney, but they should give at least 60 days as a good faith. So your client's gonna lose a couple thousand dollars, right? But they're gonna gain in the long run because the judge is gonna see it in their favor. They did act in good faith. They gave enough time, more than enough time, for the tenants to look for apartments. Does that make sense? So at any time, on the month-to-month, at any time, you can say, hey, listen, let's firm this up and change it to a 1-year lease, or you have to get out at any time. Okay? Now, the 1-year lease would only be in effect 30 days, because you have to give a 30-day notice. As of the next month, we're going to do this. Or as of next month, we're going to do that. Or we're not doing it at all. Goodbye. You guys got it? Yes.
Does the rule apply for commercial or private or?
So, this is mainly for residential. Enforceability is mainly for residential. But what we're saying here, as far as being able to kick somebody out on a month-to-month, is standard for everybody. The good faith, that's the residential side. Because the consumer is always protected. Business to business is handled totally different. Okay? But residential, you have a lot of rights, and that's why this chapter alone is very important for landlords, potential landlords, existing potential, to go over. Because look at this, and this is enforced a lot in commercial, what I'm gonna say. So, Celine, if you had stayed another day, and they allowed you to stay there, see, for the 4 days, you had a package deal, right? You stayed another day. Are you going to pay a package deal or are you going to pay the daily rate? Most likely, you're going to pay the daily rate. So there's a penalty. You can stay, but there's a penalty for staying, correct? So it says right here, a tenant, a New Jersey tenant who remains in possession of leased premises after giving notice You said you're going to leave, right? But you're still here. You may be held liable for the daily rate, the penalty, double the rent in this case. Okay? Usually commercial, they enforce it. Residential, here's the good news, most landlords do not know that they are entitled to collect double the rent. So for tenants, that's great, right? So, when the lease is longer than 1 month, the landlord may commence proceedings to remove a tenant who has held over. Subsequent acceptance of rent by the landlord creates a tenancy from month to month. Yes?
So my question is when it comes to like business, not residential, because like my grandfather's actually going through this. He was told, he was given 30 days to leave the property. So he rents a garage and he has a ton of, he's a mechanic, he has a ton of equipment. And the landlord just ended the lease, it was month to month, and he just said he has 30 days to leave. So does my grandfather have any rights in terms of like extending that? Because he has a lot of equipment, it's gonna be hard to find another garage.
So here's the thing, that question should be more directed to an attorney. But, that works. Yeah, of course, everybody has rights. Businesses have rights, right? But you have to show hardship. It's not just an excuse that you cannot find another place. The excuse is you cannot find another place. It's going to hinder your business, and there's a lot of more things that happen with it. Right. If it was a sudden termination, right, then you can fight for it. Your Honor, please, in good faith, can you force the landlord to allow me another 30 days on top? You can ask for it. For business to business is a little different. You might not be granted.
Right.
Just prove hardship. But residential, traditionally, they do have that hardship embedded into their rights. What happened?
My back is cooking.
Your back is cooking? You want some suntan lotion? I
I
have
feel like I was done right now. Roasting.
You had a question?
Yes, if I want to buy a house, the family, if the house is rentable.
You need a realtor? I'm sorry. Sorry.
No, if I want to buy a house and I want the house empty, if the house is rented, can I say I want the house?
You can say whatever you want. The seller has to accept that offer.
Because you know what, when I bought my house, it was rented, both apartment, and I told the lawyer I want the house empty, and they say no, just one apartment has to be empty, the other one, you know.
So, okay, but that's negotiation. You can always ask, this is my offer. Here's $200,000 for the house, but I want it empty. You can always ask. But if they have standing leases, if something that's long term.
Lease, you know. But then I didn't have problem with them, but yeah.
Okay, so for next time, do you need an attorney?
I mean, the reality of it really is, you gotta think of the seller. What about if you don't get your mortgage?
That's the
So now
problem.
they done got rid of their tenant, so they try to say, no, you can deal with the tenant later.
Yeah,
We'll
I
give
have
up
to.
notice. So that was what you faced. But
Yeah.
You still bought the house.
You still
so
bought it,
didn't-
so you accepted it.
Exactly.
Yes, I did.
Offer, acceptance. But they can come up with an agreement that has a certain period of time later that they have to leave. But anyway, you have to understand, it's a catch-22, like Suzanne is saying right now, with cocaine.
Our attorney should send a notice to the tenant, 60-day notice after.
Sure, but that's what I'm trying to say. At the time of offer, until we closed, we don't know if you're gonna close. So as a landlord myself, I was gonna be like,
I need to collect this right.
I'm gonna collect the rent, because you're not the first one to come by as a buyer. Last offer fell through. Imagine if I had to kick out my tenants.
Mhm.
So it's a catch-22. Should I kick them out, right, or not? Are we gonna close, or not?
Are you willing
But
to
that's
pay a
why
penalty?
attorneys. I'm sorry.
Are you willing to pay a penalty if we don't close?
That's it. But that's why attorneys get involved and they prepare proper contracts where if the seller does not kick them out, then the buyer attorney will send out a letter that gives a 60-day notice. If there's no lease, if there's a standing lease, then the one you're entitled to kick out is one for you to live in. And you still have to give 60 to 90 days notice depending on the situations. And I'm going to show you in a little bit, in some situations, they're allowed to stay there for up to 6 months. You're the one suffering. Anyway, but everything is about notice. Everything is about disclosure. That was chapter 3, remember? As long as you disclose what your intentions are, you should be able to craft a proper contract that will protect you as a landlord or them as a tenant. All right. So you guys remember that it's state for years. We don't have to give notice, right? That courtesy call to say, hey, get out, we don't have to. In a periodic estate, you have to. Because if you're there month to month, I got to give you 1 month's notice. Or you got to give me 1 month's notice. Okay? Any questions? Great. Tenancy at will. We already covered this. Just highlight the first sentence, put stars. And tenancy at sufferance on the next page. We also cover this. Tenancy at sufferance means I don't want you there. And you're still there. Look what it says. You're there without consent of the landlord, and a tenant at sufferance can be evicted at any time. Sorry? No, they can be evicted at any time. It just might take some time. But they can. Okay? It depends on the city, it depends on your attorney. Get an eviction attorney, somebody that's all they do.
Unless if you are in a basement.
Different story. It's illegal to begin with.
Yes.
So you're stuck with them.
And you owe the money.
And you owe the money. If you do kick them out, you have to pay them all the rent money that they paid right back, plus interest.
Plus the one that you didn't collect.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you held their money. You took their money. Press it. Go ahead, rent basements.
And a guy living for 3.5 years in a basement without paying, and it's like you give him $5,000 to get out.
I know in the hillside. Yep, the property in the hillside. I remember that. But it was 7,000. They settled for 5. Sorry.
A lot of people rent the basement.
Almost everybody rents a basement. Not supposed to. And if you get caught, or if there's a sale, there's realtors advertising, hey, you have the extra room. Right? Careful with those.
For entertainment.
Oh, that's what it is, entertainment. Anyway, let's speed up a little bit. We already know this stuff, standard lease provisions. It's the same thing as the essentials of a valid contract. Who remembers the 4 essential elements of a valid contract?
Above 18.
Above 18?
18 and older.
So, and completely insane, so competent parties. Lucilla? Offer and acceptance. What else? Consideration, very good. And
Legal.
the right type of coke, yes. Legal purpose. Very good. So these are the 4 essential elements of a valid contract. And we started this chapter by saying that a lease is a contract. Therefore, capacity to contract. That means the parties must be sane adults, so 18 years of age or older and of sound mind. A demising clause that says, I'm going to transfer to you. This is all part of the offer and acceptance. Description of the premises. Just mark the bullet points, that's all. A clear statement of the term, the consideration, which is the rent. And of course, if it's for 3 years or more, it must be in writing. Bless you. Look what it says, the last bullet point. Signatures. So here's the thing. I want to address the signatures. There's no coffee. I want to address the...
That's in this car, no again?
Get a straw. It's funny. You have the espresso stuff over there. You go for that coffee? Coming all the way here, taking from the students. Anyway. So if you guys notice, it says signature. My point here with the signature is, when we went over the 4 essential elements, did we say signature was one of them?
No.
No, right? So now we have to look at, it says, it must be in writing if it's for 3 years or more. So if it's not in writing, do we need signatures?
Yes.
If it's not in writing. If it's a verbal agreement, how are we gonna sign? Where are we gonna sign?
I say it's not a real lease.
I'm sorry?
That's what I say it's not a real lease.
It is a release. It's a verbal agreement. It's a handshake. My point is, when you're looking at the question in the state exam, I mentioned this yesterday, I'll mention it again. All of these are essential elements except don't get tricked by signatures, because if it's an oral or verbal agreement, no signature is required. Okay? The only reason why I mentioned signature here is because if it's 3 years or more, it's in writing. So unless the question specifically states that it is in writing, do we need signatures? Unless it specifically states, do you need it? No. Unless it specifically states, do you need it? No. If it says in writing, do you need it? Yes.
So if it just says 3 years or more, then it knows in writing.
If it says it's more than 3 years, then the answer to the question, and the answer is, it must be in writing. Still does not talk about signatures. I got other questions. Somebody, some of you at the end of the exam, you called me up and said, there was a question like this. And I'm like, okay, did it say this, this, and that? Yes. Okay, so the answer is this, this, and that. Over 4 years teaching the same course, I know all the questions are in the state exam. So if you remember anything when you take it, just let me know. All of them. And I'm telling you right now, if there's a question that says the lease is for it's a 5-year lease, what they're asking for
It's just supposed to be written.
has to be in writing. That's the answer. Look for the answer that says must be in writing. Oh shoot, this is live. Thank God for private groups on Facebook.
Somebody's watching.
I have 3 people watching, and then because it's a open YouTube channel as well, until I put it private, sometimes I have like 34 views. That's the last one was 34 views on the video. So yeah. Anyway. I haven't had an issue so far. My job is to get you to pass, so I just cannot give you the exact questions, the exact answers. But I can train you on it. Now, use of a premises. This is common sense. Every lease is going to say this is what you could do with it, right? We lease this space for school purposes. Can I put a Starbucks here? I already got the coffee. Can I put a Starbucks here? No, because the lease does not allow. If the lease was broad, if it didn't say anything about the usage, right, then all I needed to look for was city regulations. You guys got it? So, please highlight, all it says is that you use it for whatever you're allowed only. If you break that, then you have to go. Term of the lease, every lease must be specific on the term, whether it's a start now and end later, or it's a month to month or week to week or whatever, but it must state the actual way that the lease is prepared. Is it definite or is it periodic? Okay? You guys good? New Jersey requirements. It says, all offers, contracts, or leases prepared by licensees must indicate the business relationships that the firm has with respect to the parties named in the documents, and acknowledgement that the CIS was received by the buyers or tenants and sellers or landlords prior to the first showing of the property. When are we supposed to provide or furnish the CIS?
Yes.
First conversation.
When? At the first conversation. Okay? Now, what is the CIS?
Consumer information statement.
Information statement.
Declaration.
In every single class, the answer is the same. I did not ask what the acronym meant. I asked what it was.
Descriptions.
But in every single class, what is the CIS? Consumer Information Statement. Great. It's a disclosure. It's a notice of what?
how can you represent them?
So types of business relationships. And what are the types of business relationships? Listen, the reason why I asked you this way is because there might be a question that asks what the CIS is. It's a notice or type of disclosure, period. It's not a contract. There's no contractual obligation when you sign, and I mentioned this when we were in those pages. There's no contractual obligation when somebody signs that disclosure. It's just Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, Mr. or Mrs. Landlord, or tenants. This is how I could represent you. Simple. Got it? Say it louder.
Seller's broker, buyer's broker, transactional broker, something else.
And something else. Great. Disclose the later. Okay. So for those of you that don't remember, I want you to write page 34 and page 35.
And then turn to page.
And then turn to page 34 and page 35. Real quick. I'm serious. Let's go back to it. The trip down memory lane. Let me ask again. What does it say on top?
Please read me.
Please read me. Since yesterday, or the day before, or last week, who has read it? Now you read it? Now you read it?
Yeah.
Great. The rest of you, catch up. Mayo. You guys got it? You have to. It's imperative that you understand. There's 5 or 6 questions around the subject of the CIS. 5 or 6 questions. Out of a whole chapter, 5 or 6 questions just in that section. That's how important it is. I keep on going back. Some of you roll your eyes. There's a reason. There's 22 questions just on chapter 3 or surrounding chapter 3. There's roughly 36 questions between the first 3 chapters. The rest is divided with the rest of the chapters. Do you see how important this is? The agency relationship, the disclosures. I'm not saying it just because. This is where you fail the most. I see the results. I see it in my tests. I see it in the state exams. This is where you fail the most.
Oh, we see it in real life.
And you see it in real life. Because most people don't understand this. All right. Now, New Jersey also requires that the following language appear in exactly this form at the top of the first page for a residential lease prepared by a real estate licensee for a term of 1 year or more. So, you guys might remember this from yesterday. It says, this is a legally binding lease, that it will become final within 3 business days. Underline, double underline, triple underline, business days. All right? So yesterday we had this is a legally binding contract that will become final within 3 business days. Now what happened, or what happens during those 3 business days? You have the right to
Review.
attorney review or cancel the whole thing. Because after the 3rd business day, if nobody disputed any of the terms, or if nobody canceled, then it becomes binding, and now you're going to suffer if you decide to back out, right? You suffer monetary losses. So attorney review, you get to study with the attorney. Counting the time, I want you guys to highlight it again. It's not highlighted here, but I want you to highlight here where it says you count the 3, and I want you to write business days, the 3 business days, from the date of delivery of the signed lease to the tenant and landlord. So it's the same as a contract, right? I'm going to offer the landlord, hey, these are the terms of your contract, this is my offer. These are the terms of your lease, this is my offer. If they agree, then they sign. Once I receive a copy of that signed copy from the landlord, the 3 business days start. Just giving notice over the phone, hey, the landlord accepted. Just giving notice is not enough. You got it? I have to receive a signed copy back. All right? Next page, we have a sample of a residential lease. Again, we don't go over this. It's fill in the blanks, but get familiar with it later. You're going to use it. the fastest way to make money, especially here in the ironbound section.
I have a question. Would you say?
I did not open the forum for
Oh,
questions.
okay. So I'm gonna write this question down.
No, go ahead, so.
Would you say common practice would be to suggest, tenants to get their leases, reviewed by an attorney?
If they should, the answer is yes. Everybody should, it's a contract. Everybody. Right now, who has a gym membership? Gym membership, great. So I didn't ask who goes to the gym, I asked who has a gym membership. How many people go to the gym on impulse, right? New Year's resolution, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And then the only time you actually went to the gym was to sign up, right? But they charge you every month. And you're like, it's 1 year, it ends. And then at the end of the year, here comes the next month and they're billing again. And you try to cancel and it's a 1-year contract again. Because you did not read what you signed. So even gym contracts should be reviewed by attorneys nowadays. They're tight. Open up a gym. Never-ending source of money, because people forget that $20 bill. Like 20 or 30 bucks, people forget it. I'm guilty of that. I went through that. Right.
I got 2 gym memberships that I don't go to.
You have 2? So you were suckered into it twice?
She's rich. She got
Oh, she's rich, she got money.
You can't do that.
I go to the gym every day. At least I pass by it every day.
And it's so funny, because like you said, I tried to call and cancel, and it's like, oh no, this is a year. What do you mean?
Use that.
Without the attorneys.
Terrible. I didn't talk about the gym in your class.
You did. The thing was, I was planning on going, and I changed my mind.
Yeah. All right.
I have a dream.
It happens.
6 years.
Terrible, terrible, terrible. So it's a little bit more expensive, but now you have those without contracts. If you're not sure what you're going to do it without the contract. All right, next. Federal lead-based payment disclosure. You guys remember this, right? It was the same for real estate contracts. We talked about this in Chapter 9. If the property was built before 1978, then automatic, you have to present with the lead-based paint hazard pamphlet and include a disclosure statement in every contract. Okay? Quick question. Does the landlord have to test for lead-based paint?
No.
No. Does he have to disclose?
Yes.
If he knows.
If he knows.
Yes? Depends. If he knows. Okay, so the law says if I know about it, I have to say it. But I'm not required to test for it. So if I don't know, I don't know. Okay? Security deposits. You guys know what a security deposit is? It's like a good faith deposit. I will comply with the terms of the contract, and if I don't, you get to keep my money. That's what it is, right? So it's like a good faith deposit. Now, it says right here, this security guarantees payment of rent and safeguards against the tenant's destruction of the premises. Residential, this is in Jersey, residential landlords may charge no more than 1.5 months rental figure as security deposit. Residential, underline, double underline, triple underline, residential, 1.5 months. In Jersey. New York's a little different, but Jersey, 1.5 months is the max. Have you seen ads that say 2 months?
Yeah.
Some 3 months? Illegal. Okay? Illegal to do that. 1.5. If it's commercial, there's no maximum. Different story. Commercial, you can charge a 1 year deposit. You're here for 1 year, I charge you 1 year. No problem. But residential, you got to remember that. Residential, 1.5 month only. Make sure you have stars on that one. And the best is trying to explain New York landlords when they decide to buy property in Jersey. Is explaining to them Jersey laws are a little different.
Yeah.
Like, no, I want 2 months security deposit or 3 months security deposit. I'm like, okay. If you get sued, it's on you.
The whole lease is invalid, isn't it?
Yep. questions? Yes.
I see that landlord's request, the 1.5 security plus an additional month rent.
Well, I can charge the first month when you move in. Or you can prepay if you want, but when you move in, you don't pay again.
Yeah, you don't, to ask an additional month.
Well, the security deposit is separate.
Right.
I can ask, you're talking about asking an additional month and then when you move in another month? That's illegal.
You
Okay.
mean when they say like a month and a half and then first month's rent?
If they say first month's rent, it's okay, because I'm about to move in.
What happens if that's for 2 months rent? Is that illegal?
Look, as far as you asking, is illegal. Me offering, like if I want to negotiate as a tenant, I want to negotiate with the landlord, say, hey, listen, can we drop the rent price a little bit? I'm going to give you 6 months up front. Different story. But the landlord requiring it, no.
But I see that some of the landlords, they ask an extra month's rent that's gonna be used in the last month of the lease.
So we're not a gym. Gyms do that. Going back to the gym. The last month they charge up front. We're not a gym, so technically no. They'll be considered a secure deposit. So that's the same thing as asking 2.5 months.
So with the same example that you just gave of them offering 6 months,
Mhm.
if a tenant knows, hey, they probably had an eviction on their credit from years ago, and they know the tenant might not, the landlord might not accept them, they're like, well, I'll pay 3 months security. But
Not
they
you
offered,
cannot call it security.
okay, so even if they offered, they can't call it security.
Cannot call it security.
Okay.
You can prepay rent
Mhm.
as a tenant. You can offer to prepay rent. You can prepay the whole year.
Okay.
Okay. Like there's a program called SODA program,
Mhm.
and that's what they do. They prepay the whole year.
Go there.
So prepaying is different than secure deposit. Okay? The landlord demanding it, that's illegal. That happened to one of our agents, almost got in trouble in the agency that I was before, so around almost 3 years ago. He almost got in trouble because of that. He had to prove that the tenant is the one that offered the 6 months. That's why I said 6 months. He offered 6 months up front as long as they lowered $200 in the rent. And that's how they got it. The real estate commission, there was a complaint regarding the property itself, and it came all around big circle to what happened here and how there were 6 months up front plus a secure deposit. And the guy had to go to a hearing where he said, no, the tenant offered 6 months. The landlord did not require it. Right? So the tenant offered, not the landlord, because in the real estate commission, what they said was, if the landlord had requested additional monies aside from the secure deposit, then that would be considered still secure deposit and illegal. Okay? So this is based on the actual experience. So 1.5 months rent, and then the move-in rental figure is fine, because you're about to move in. Now it's up to you to either pay prepay and start moving stuff in, or pay the first of the month. Now, landlords, raise your hand. Great. All right. So you should know this. What do you do with a secure deposit? Atlantic City. What do you do? Go to Vegas. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Put it in an interest-bearing account
And notify the tenant of where it is.
and notify the tenant where it is. You know why? Because it's not your money. Other people's money always goes into an escrow account. Interest-bearing because it's not your money and you're holding it hostage for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years, whatever. Okay? In fact, the tenant is entitled to all the interest as a credit towards the rent on the anniversary of the lease.
Has to fill up W-9 form. They both
Oh, yeah.
will be in the account.
Absolutely. But the money doesn't belong to you, remember that. Now there's a lot of landlords, what they do, I'm not saying you guys, but there's a lot of landlords, what they do is they'll take the security deposit from you in order to pay the tenant that's leaving. What happened to the interest?
Bye-bye.
It doesn't matter if it's like 30 cents, which most likely that's where it'll be. It doesn't matter if it's 30 cents, that money does not belong to you. Okay? Yes?
isn't the security deposit, isn't the security deposit used only to cover the damage of the unit
Ah.
in case?
I'm gonna get to that in a second. What is the security deposit used for? Actually, we went over this already in the beginning of this, this section, but I'm gonna address that in a second. If the property is sold, so hold on to that thought, Louis. If the property is sold, the landlord, so the current owner, must transfer that security deposit to the new owner. Doesn't give it back to the tenant, gives it to the new owner, who's gonna hold hostage the money again. And the new owner has to notify the tenant, hey, I've received the monies. It is now at Bank of America, and you will earn interest on it over the years. So you have to notify the tenant that you received that money. Why? Because again, that money does not belong to you, it belongs to the tenant. Now, landlords must return the security deposit minus itemized deductions. Make sure you underline minus itemized deductions for damages done by the tenant within 30 days after the end of the lease. Minus itemized deductions. So you give me $1,000 deposit, and I gave you $10 back. You're entitled to question it. You're entitled to say, well, wait a minute. What did you use $990 for? That's why itemized deductions. Because there's some landlords that are very smart. Right? This happened to me a few years ago when I was living in Elizabeth. $1,850 was my security deposit that had to be returned to me. Back then, I did not know, and got to a point I did not care to fight the cause. Right? I did not know what I'm about to say next, but I did not care to fight the cause. But the landlord, Portuguese, of course, he was in Portugal, and when I left, it was the end of August. When I left, his son did a tour of the house. Everything was good. He came back on the 23rd of September. I remember clearly. He came back on the 23rd of September, and I called him. Say, hey, how was Portugal? He's like, oh, Portugal's great. So chit-chatting, right? It was great. And 5 minutes later, finding out how Portugal was, how things were here while he was out and all that. I asked him, so, quick question. When can I pass by to get my security deposit? The best conversation happened in the first 5 minutes. The worst conversation happened when I asked for security deposit. And he goes, you're kidding me, right? Like, what do you mean? It's my security deposit. Yeah, but there's 3 smoke detectors missing in the house. I'm like, your son checked the house, everything was there. And he did cut me off and goes like, not only that, those smoke detectors were special smoke detectors because they had also carbon monoxide detector like all built in, and they're special, they're the best at this and that. I'm like thinking in my head, okay, great. So $100 maybe, 200 if anything, like top of the line. And I even checked. Home Depot at the time had a promotion for these top of the line smoke detectors, 3 for $120. My security deposit was $1,850. Did I get that money?
No.
No. I was not going to fight it. I started thinking of, the way I started thinking of things were court, attorneys, waste of time, a percentage of it goes to the attorney.
Has it been 6 years?
Oh yeah, way more than that.
Oh.
Anyway, but I did not know that the penalty for violation of this requirement is double the rent. Now it would pay for the attorney, and I will get my security deposit back. Some people take advantage of you not knowing or being too young to not understand any of this stuff. So this is prior to me getting into real estate.
Now, with this 30, it says end of lease. Let's say the
Say a lot there, it
person
says what?
it says end of lease.
End of lease, yeah.
Let's say the person did not leave the end of their lease. Maybe you had, end up having to evict them, and the day of the eviction, would the day of the eviction considered end of lease?
Eviction, you're not getting your deposit back. Let me go back up. So addressing Lewis as well.
Mm-hmm.
This security guarantees payment of
Rent.
rent and safeguards against the tenant's destruction. So if it's an eviction, that means I'm at a loss. Bye-bye deposit.
Not if they paid their rent and they were like a month-to-month tenant.
What was the reason for the eviction? Because an eviction, there has to be a cause. What is the cause?
Maybe you just needed the place vacant because you were selling, let's say.
So that's not an eviction. I requested it.
Okay.
An eviction is, I went to court and I had to kick you out because I was suffering for some reason.
Okay.
Okay, so the term eviction is I'm forcing you out because you're doing something that is hurting me.
Okay. So if it's an eviction that took place, period, that's it.
That's it. You lose your, unless the judge says something different.
Okay.
Okay, but that's it. So it's for payment of rent, but the reason why I wanted to address that at the end is what I'm about to say next, because it's to cover rent and destruction. But right here, this happens a lot, and most landlords do not know. The tenant is not entitled to apply the deposit to the last month's rent. This happens a lot where the tenant goes, especially here in the Ironbound, it's funny. Tenants go like, listen, I'm about to leave. How about you use the deposit as last month's rent? Are you nuts? No offense. Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, that tenant is the best tenant you ever had. You see no damages to the property, but you don't know what's behind that furniture. All right, I had a student, Rashid Caldwell, he was in my class, he goes like, listen, in Ohio, that's where he's from, in Ohio, I moved into a property that there was a manhole. When I saw it, the property before, when I was looking at the property, there was the furniture, everything was amazing. But once the furniture was out, there was a manhole. You could go through. It was hidden by the furniture. So we don't know what's there. Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, if you allow your tenant to live on the last month, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Now he has to come out of your pocket to fix everything. You guys got it?
Can't
So,
take it to court.
say it again?
You can't take it to court.
Oh, that's the thing. Good luck. So, my very first property, so my partner and I, we had to evict somebody. At the time, I personally thought that eviction was it. We won. We're getting our money back. But no, you have to file a second lawsuit to recover monies. Eviction is strictly to dispossess something. We're going to highlight that in a second. It's to dispossess something, someone of the property, kicking them out. It's not to recover money. Now that you have the judgment on the eviction, you can go file a second lawsuit to recover monies. Different judge, different claim, different everything. So good luck trying to find money to cover that manhole. Okay? Now, an alternative, which most people do not know, is that you have something called insurance. And that to me sounds like an act of vandalism, isn't it? Destruction of property is vandalism. And your homeowner's insurance covers that. Just most people do not know.
That's the good news. The bad news, your insurance goes high.
It's not like a car. If you do it constantly, then you're in an area where that could happen, your insurance goes up. But it's not like a car. You have a claim and boom, sky high. Your homeowner's insurance traditionally stays for random damages. If it's, again, consistent, then we need to address that and reevaluate re-underwrite the policy.
So in a situation like that, where they say they want to use it for the last month's rent, and of course you say no, what do? File eviction? That's going to take more time than them leaving anyway?
No, so they're not going to pay you. You're already aware of that.
Yeah.
But your first try is to do what?
Try to get the money in.
Try to get the money. Right. So by law, I'm going to show you something that every landlord must present to the tenants. Right? That most landlords, 99.9% of you here do not know, including the ones taking this course again. It happens. So let's conclude this portion. It says right here, nor can the landlord keep the deposit if the only damage to the apartment could be construed as normal wear and tear. Okay? So if there's smudges on the wall, wear and tear. Now, if you guys notice, we have weird colors here, right? That's not normal, and that's not how it was presented to us. So at the end, when we leave, we must restore the property to original condition, because it's not normal wear and tear. You guys got it? So a carpet that's run down, that's normal. If you have a pet and it's destroyed, the carpet, there's holes, that's not normal. So they can charge you for the replacement of a whole thing. So now you lose it. Okay? They don't patch just the corner, the whole thing. Painting, it's normal wear and tear. Just remember that. All right. Late payments, great. So we already covered a lot of stuff here that we're about to go over. But I want to ask a question. When are you late?
Depends on what the lease says.
It depends on the lease. But by law, forget the lease for a second. By law, you're late on the first of the month at the end of that business day. So, most leases state a grace period, 5 days, 8 days, whatever. But what I need you to remember and turn off the switch from real life to text life, which is only senior citizens receiving Social Security, old age, railroad retirement pensions, or any other government pensions must be given. Please underline, double underline, triple underline, put stars. Must be given a 5-day grace period free of late charges. Five-day grace period free of late charges. Questions? Any questions? Nope. Great. So when are you late? Okay.
End of business day, of course.
And who's entitled to grace period?
Senior citizens, retirement.
That's it. Got it? Great. Legal principles of a lease. We already covered this. Just highlights right there. If the property runs for the period of 2 years or longer, then it could be recorded. And we already covered that recording of a long-term lease puts the world on notice of long-term rights. Okay.
I have a question.
$5. I'm sorry, what?
Now, when you renew the lease, so is there like a specific?
When you renew the lease?
When you, right, renew the lease. Is there a way that you can charge additional on top of the old rates?
Increase if there's a way. Every year there's a way. The question is, some municipalities, as we'll talk about in a little bit, some municipalities have limitations on how much you can increase. And that depends on the type of property as well. So it's not every property that you can increase, right? It depends on the type of property, depends on your municipality, they have limitations. The state of New Jersey has no law on rent increases. They leave it broad. The state of New Jersey just says reasonable increases. There's no specific amount, where some municipalities have specific percentages with a max amount of increase. Lease premises, possession of it, it's common sense. You rent it, it's yours to take possession. Improvements. I'm going to give you guys a break in a second. Improvements. Can you improve the property? We talked about this in chapter 5 as well. You can, as long as you have written authorization of the landlord. So any such alterations generally become property of the landlord. Okay? That is, they become fixtures. It is customary to provide that trade fixtures, because these are business, we talked about this in chapter 5, because it's business, they're removable, right? This TV is removable. It's not part of the real estate. It doesn't belong to the landlord. When I moved in here as a business, they knew I was going to put this, so they know I'm going to remove it. Trade fixtures only, okay? I just have to restore it to the same condition as when I took possession. Maintenance of the premises. Look what it says. Every residential lease oral or written, every residential lease, oral or written, must contain an implied warranty of habitability. What does that mean? It means the landlord guarantees that the leased property is fit for human habitation and that the tenant is not subjected to any conditions that could endanger life, health, or safety. And the landlord, look what's in green, is required to maintain the dwelling units in a habitable condition. Okay? So you cannot live in a place that endangers your life, health, and safety. Simple as that. It says on the next page that the landlord must make any necessary repairs within the reasonable time after notification. What do you guys consider to be a reasonable time? Say loud. It depends on the issue. You got it? For instance, I like to compare winter time when there's, to summertime. So winter time when there's no heat, the answer is ASAP, right? Because if it's really cold, you don't want to give a 1 week notice to come back. No, ASAP. So traditionally within 24 hours, because it's very dangerous. So with that being said, if a landlord fails to make repairs, New Jersey does recognize the tenant's right to repair and deduct. So, if you as a landlord don't fix it, your tenant can fix it. Look what it says. The tenant may withhold rent until the repairs have been made, or if the repairs are vital and the landlord does not make them within a reasonable amount of time, have the repairs done and deduct the cost from the rent. Obviously with receipts. You don't just repair it and no receipts. Right? But as an example, so there's a little mistake here. There's a hole. Okay? Actually, we did it on purpose for this example, just saying. So there's a hole. I call the landlord and I say, hey, there's a hole. Must be fixed. If they don't do it, can I do it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I repair and deduct?
Yes.
It's not vital. It's not an issue that will endanger my life, health, or safety. What if there's no water?
That's different.
What if there's no heat? You guys understand?
Yeah.
Now I can withhold the rent or repair and deduct because it is vital. Certain things like this hole, obviously, we did it, not them. If it's something that's dangerous, that's falling, right, then we can repair.
Something as small as like that hole. Do the landlord even have to really fix it?
No, that's what I'm saying. All they have to do is keep it in a habitable condition. Can you live with a tiny hole over there? You can't? It's like the guy from Austin Powers. Moldy, 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 moldy.
It's funny that I asked that question because I have a tenant who they put basically the blanks for the like power switch over a hole where electrical unit used to be, and it's crooked. So she called me and was like, "Oh my God, it's crooked." I was like, "Is it a life-saving issue?" She's like, "No." I was like, "Get off my phone."
That's what you did?
Yes.
What a great landlord.
I was like, "No." Because it was like, it's crooked. You could even adjust it yourself.
Yeah, so new structures are easy. Old structures are a little complicated to fix and align and stuff. Especially because people work really fast and try to get out of the way. So yeah. But you could have fixed it. Come on. All right, next. It's crooked. I would have bugged you too. I like things aligned. Yeah, don't even start. That's why I was looking down. This was the most amazing job ever. I asked the guys that were doing this.
Oh yeah, that cricket.
Do you guys see where the other ones are? They're like a foot lower. For some reason, they thought it was okay to put it.
Up there.
Yeah.
It's not really straight.
Yeah. I don't think straight is my issue right now. It's like, it's an eyesore because I could have had these cables lined on the floor and now one cable's gonna be further up and all the other ones are down. Anyway,
And your CD kicks in.
so where the landlord furnishes heat. So there's houses where heat is included, right? So where the landlord furnishes heat, between October 1st and May 1st, all rooms must be heated to at least 68 degrees from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. and 65 degrees at night. State requirement. The minimum temperature is 65 degrees. For those of you that are saying or thinking it's cold, remember, if it's winter time, there's pajamas, there's blankets, comforters. It's not summertime, right? She's like, oh, it's cold. Anyway. Assignment and subleasing. Guys, we addressed this yesterday. Assignments is I put a contract together, right? And I'm flipping that contract to somebody else, correct? Do you remember this? Assignments? Great. So I'm going to focus on is subleasing. What is a sublease? I'm leasing a portion of my property. Subleasing. So let's say I put a desk here and I'm renting the desk space. I have the master lease, which is the one I have with the landlord, right? And then I have a lease with the person that's renting the space from me. Most contracts prohibit subleasing. Most contracts prohibit subleasing. What is the difference between these two? In an assignment at the bottom, there's primary and secondary liability. Right? We talked about this yesterday when I assigned it to you. The assignor got rid of the property to the assignee. But if the assignee does not maintain the property or backs out of the deal, both of us get sued. Primary, secondary. Does that make sense? Here's the thing. In sublease, when the property is subleased, the original tenant is still responsible for seeing that the rent's paid. Right? So I had and most landlords can attest to this. I had a property here on Murray close by, and in that property I had one tenant. He rented the second floor. It's a 3-bedroom. Rented the second floor by himself. Okay? What are you going to do? Why do you need a, well, I'm going to do an office. I'm going to do my gym. It's going to look really nice. Great. 2 days later, there's like a flow of people in and out. He invited his friends for a housewarming party. 3 days later, still that movement. 4 days later, still that movement. So I came to find out that he was renting the rooms. Not only was renting the rooms, he had people that came at night, people that came in the morning. Because he was a promoter, event promoter, so he had the night crowd and the day crowd. Anyway, so I leased to one person and I had 20 people there. Okay? Is that what we agreed to? No. Now one day he goes like, no, there's only 2 more people with me. Okay? So this is what I want. The 2 people I allow, they have to be on the lease. Okay? So it says they don't have socials, they don't have this, they don't have that. Okay, so you are responsible for everything. I was trying to be helpful, right? You're responsible for everything. I'll allow you to stay, but you are responsible. And one day comes the obvious. Hey, Bruno, what's up? See, my roommates did not pay me, so I don't have the full rent money. Now, what I asked the guy was, when we spoke, I told you that you're the only one on the lease. Therefore, you are the only one that is responsible. When it comes to subleases, I don't care how many roommates you have, right? I do care because I don't want them there, but unless they're on the lease. But for this purpose, I don't care how many roommates you have, you're the one solely responsible for it. You guys understand? Whoever name is on the lease is the one solely responsible for it. If you bring other people and they don't pay you, that's your problem, not my problem. Assignments, both of you get sued. Subleases, the original one gets sued. Is that clear? Good. Destruction of premises is common sense. If you destroy, you got to fix. Termination of the lease, we already covered all this. Please highlight the first sentence only. We already covered this. First sentence. Second paragraph. It says, when conditions of lease are breached or broken, a landlord may terminate the lease and evict the tenant. Look what it says next. It's in green. Please highlight, underline, put stars, arrows, bubbles, whatever you got to put. But it says that this action must be handled through a court proceeding according to state law. The landlord who wishes to be rid of a tenant is not allowed to use threats of violence, change locks, discontinue essential services like water or heat, or seize the tenant's possessions unless the landlord is Portuguese. That is so true, right? Like we're above the law. Old school landlords, that's what they think. Anyway, so the point is, a lot of people, they buy property. That's why they need to know this stuff. They buy property and think, hey, it's my property. You have to pay me, and you get the benefit of renting from me. If you don't pay, I change the locks. Right? Have you heard of these situations before?
Yeah.
Right. Can't do it. If they don't pay, I'm going to throw everything on the street. This is not a divorce. Can't do it. All right? If you don't pay. So I love the Murray property. You know why? Because when I bought it, there was somebody living in the basement, and felt really bad for the person. But the guy living on the first floor cut off all the access of water down there and heat, because the person that was living there, did not pay the rent to the first floor. Now this was a foreclosure. The owner had disappeared, and the tenant, we talked about this the other day, tenants that believe they're entitled to everything, the tenants took over the house and collected rents.
Nice.
Nice, right? Yeah, he also had like apparently a salon in the first floor. So he was living in the back of the first floor, and the front turned into a salon. Yeah, so really cool. You guys are, I'm sorry?
Where do you find this?
Newark?
Thank you.
Newark? And before you guys ask, the guy on the first floor,
Just Portuguese.
yeah, and the wife was Brazilian. So perfect mix for this, you know? Both people think they're above the law. Anyway, so yeah, that's what they were doing. They actually turned off the water and the heat because the basement was not paying the first floor. Crazy. And they're not even the landlord. So the answer is double no to that. Landlord, court. Tenant cannot collect rent from other tenants when they're not the owners. Okay? Where do you find these people? I could tell you so many stories about properties here in Newark. Crazy stuff.
The Einbach area.
Oh, you're learning? You're learning with Paul how to drop highlighters? What were you saying, Celine?
I said the Einbach area. No, that's where you find it.
Not just the Ironbound, but I can tell you right now, Ironbound is crazy. But the properties in South Newark, yeah, I can tell you a lot of stories there too. All right. What if we cancel the lease? Can we cancel the lease? Like we have a 1-year lease, and you know what? 6 months later, we're done with it. Can we cancel the lease? If it's mutual agreement, yes. If you abandon the lease, says right here, if you abandon the lease, you'll remain liable for the terms of lease. We had a 1 year, you left 6 months later, then you're liable for 6 months. But the law in New Jersey is pro-tenant, not pro-landlord. So, the landlord is required, however, to try to mitigate damages by renting the property as soon as possible to another tenant. So I just lost somebody that promised a whole year of rent. But what I have to do is find somebody else that will promise again a whole year of rent. If it takes me 2 months to find that person, then the guy that disappeared is liable for 2 months. If it takes me 2 months to find the person that will pay $100 less, then the person that left is liable for 2 months and then 4 months at $100. Now, if we do the math, back to what I was saying before, it's not worth fighting. So forget the money, move forward. I had a situation with a property in South Newark, and the attorney said, if it's not $10,000 or more, it's not even worth it. Where are you going to get that money? They were cash, you took them in, it's on you. We could put liens on the future employment or taxes, we can. They don't even have bank accounts. So good luck. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So try to rent to somebody right away, stop crying, oh, my tenant left me, rent right away. Get somebody else. Like a Band-Aid, just rip it. Hurts less. All right? The next thing I want to do, and then I'll give you the break, is this. Please highlight, we already know this. A stay for years requires no advance notice of termination. It automatically ends. Just mark the bullet points. If it's a month-to-month tenancy, 1 month's notice, year-to-year is 3 months, week-to-week is 1 week notice. All the way at the bottom, you guys already know this as well, I explained. Unless the lease states otherwise, it survives a sale. Just because there's a new landlord doesn't mean you can alter the terms of the lease or kick somebody out.